Hi, so I'm extremely happy and grateful to be here today with Sandy Irani, who's our new Associate Director. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you. It's really wonderful to be here and to be back in a more permanent role here in Berkeley.
And in fact, you were a graduate student at Berkeley during the 80s. We did not overlap. I think I left a year before you arrived.
Exactly.
So I am senior to you.
Yes.
Forever.
I missed the glory years of your time here.
No, I'm just joking.
We had our own glory years, though.
Yeah, so you were a grad student at Berkeley, and anything to say about those times?
It was wonderful. I mean, I felt like a whole new world opened up to me when I came here as a graduate student, and it was an incredible community. I remember walking in the first day to Dick Karp's course on concrete complexity theory, and the room was packed, not just with students, but with postdocs and visitors and other faculty. I mean, the excitement was really palpable, and they stayed for the semester. It was great. So I really kind of felt right away that I was part of something special. It was a wonderful time here.
So you were an undergraduate in Princeton, if I remember.
Yes.
And what made you decide to come to Berkeley to study theoretical computer science?
So I always loved math in high school. My dad didn't want me to major in math because he thought I wouldn't get a job afterwards. So I ended up as a double E major at Princeton. And I kept calling home and saying, where's the math? I'm not getting the math. So I eventually stumbled into a course on automata theory, which I like very much. And then a friend of mine at Princeton said he was going to take a graduate class from this new guy named Bob Tarjan, who had just come to Princeton from Bell Labs. And Bob taught this course off of his beautiful little monograph on data structures and network algorithms. And that kind of sealed the deal for me. I really loved that class. And then then I knew that's what I wanted to do. I applied to a bunch of graduate schools, and I got into Berkeley, NYU, and Columbia. And I kind of wanted to stay in the New York area because all my friends were going to be there. And I didn't visit Berkeley. Grad visit days weren't a thing back then. But I went to NYU and Columbia, and I was chatting with some of the professors there. And so this was 35 years ago, not a reflection of the current state of affairs. But I remember talking to one of the theory faculty and mentioning in passing I had gotten into Berkeley. And he stopped short and he said, oh, you got into Berkeley. Well, you need to go to Berkeley. And that was it. That was it. So that's how I ended up going to Berkeley. So
I see such parallels between our stories, you know? Yeah. First of all, you mentioned your dad, who sort of seems to be instrumental in the beginning, at least, telling you, well, you should get a job, you should go to double E, say, not into math. Yeah. And I don't think my father was as knowledgeable about the intricate differences, but he definitely was a big push, let's say in high school. I wanted to do literature. And he said, well, you have to go to the math because, you know, that's where you get the big jobs. And that's very pragmatic.
Yeah.
And, but, you know, this image of him believing in me, but also pushing me forward is very strong. And the other thing about getting into a few places and not really thinking that Berkeley is the first choice. Yeah. Yeah, also. For me, I was actually decided to go somewhere else. And then I drove up the coast. Oh. And I just go to visit, and I took University Ave, and then I saw those blue hills, and actually green hills and the blue skies. And I was like,
this is the place.
Right. Yeah. Very spontaneous, you know, a bit impulsive. So, in fact, you started with algorithms. So this interest that you had in Bob Tarjan's course and then Dick Karp continued throughout your early years.
Yeah. So I spent most of my career working in online algorithms with sort of an applied bent, sort of problems inspired by computer systems, memory management, scheduling, power management strategies. And then 12, 15 years ago, I needed to do something different. So I started taking classes and learning quantum at that point. And I made the switch eventually and started working and doing research in quantum. So it was a big change, a lot of different mathematical tools I needed to develop. And, you know, I wasn't a spring chicken anymore at that point, but it's been very rewarding and it's been a lot of fun. So
I think it's rewarding anyway to make a switch, right?
Absolutely.
Even in just the switch itself.
Yeah. Usually you make them more by epsilons than a big leap, but it's been also a very exciting time in research in quantum computing too. So I feel like I made a good choice.
And when you finished Berkeley, you went directly to Irvine, or did you go for a postdoc?
I had the job at UCI, and then I deferred it for a year and did a year of postdoc. And I spent part of the year on the East Coast and part of the year at UCSD. So.
And now you are, your permanent position is in UC Irvine, but we are extremely lucky that you're moving here to be our associate director. But you still maintain a home at Irvine.
Yeah, so I'll be commuting up weekly and back home for the weekends, and I am on leave from UCI. So, but it's wonderful to be back up here for the work week, and I feel like a graduate student again because it's really feels like home turf to me now.
It's very interesting. You know, when I decided to come from MIT, what I envisioned was that I was a graduate student again.
Yeah.
Except, you know, with a little bit more money. So I understand that you rented an apartment here at Berkeley.
I have a little place on the north side. It's very nice.
Better conditions than when a grad student?
Much better conditions. So nicer place. I've moved up in the world a little bit since then. So
that's good. Yeah. Since I think it's like 30 years now.
30, yeah. I graduated in 91. So
yeah, something of the sort. So I know that you actually, besides Berkeley itself, you were actually a program organizer at Simons Institute for the quantum cluster. So you know the workings as an organizer. Any memories from that cluster or how it worked?
It was an interesting experience to be part of the planning. I worked closely with Umesh in the process, and I think the thing that I learned from that experience is watching Umesh work a little bit is that a little bit of curating goes a long way. So just thinking in advance about how best to connect people, how much structure to have, how much programming to have, how to do whiteboard talks to, you know, to spark a discussion. A little bit of advanced planning along those lines goes a long way. And also in sort of, you know, people are coming from different fields. You've got physicists and chemists and computer scientists, and talking to them a little bit in advance so that they know things that they might take for granted that everyone knows, they need to explain. So a little bit of advanced planning can go a long way in helping people connect when they actually get to the program. So
yeah, that's true. There was a lot of experimentation, even in the I think in all the programs that Umesh was part of, which were all dedicated to quantum computing, in how to run the boot camps, say, whether to run them in a stretch, whether to divide them over a few weeks, how much space to give to interaction versus, you know, frontal. So I hope that you can actually, that's an interesting thing to experiment throughout all the programs.
I think so. You know, I think one of the wonderful things about Simons is that it brings people together and helps them connect and collaborate. And, you know, Simons has a great track record in doing that, but I think we can always be experimenting and sort of pushing the boundaries to see how we can do that better.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm a firm believer that not everything doesn't work for everyone. I mean, there are, in fact, different formats, and you have to figure out what the dynamics of the group are. Some groups are very cohesive, some groups haven't known each other before, and you need other formats to connect them.
And you need to be a little bit nimble even within the scope of a program. If something isn't working, you got to change it up and make it so that it works a little better. So
I'm really happy that you're thinking about all these sort of different ways to make this place better.
Yeah, so for example, in the summer cluster that we just had on quantum, Chinmay Nerki had the idea of just having a one-day spontaneous workshop around a set of topics. We planned it a few days in advance, and it was a big success, and that will actually serve potentially as a model for some of the things we'll do in the future quantum programs.
So moving away from just quantum, but generalizing to the rest of the Institute, what are your sort of aspirations as an associate director? It's an interesting question to ask, which the reason I'm saying is that because you would think that that's the first question you ask yourself, but I think it isn't often.
No. Well, I think it's important to come into a new place without too much of a well-formed agenda. I mean, when I've taken on administrative roles, such as department chair and others, I've been a part of the organization, so I kind of knew it quite well. I'm coming in here and I'm seeing Simons for the first time from the inside. So Simons is a very one-of-a-kind type of place. So my job for a little while is just to listen and learn, just to understand what's going on and to get a sense of how things work. But that being said, I think, like we talked about, I think there's a lot of room for innovation in terms of how we run programs, how we get people to connect within those programs, but then also how we communicate, how we can better sort of reach people outside of theory, and how we can sort of make that a more effective tool too. So, I mean, Simons has a lot of resources like the writers in residence and all kinds of different moving parts, and how we can use those even more effectively, I think.
Sounds wonderful. And in fact, I think one of the biggest challenges that both the associate director and the director should pay attention to is how to reach a wider audience within sort of theoretical computer science, engineering, mathematics, sciences, anybody that can benefit from the idea of computation and algorithms to come here.
Yes, to come here. And I think it's also good for us to think about how to communicate that. What's important to us? What are the important burning questions in our field too? So that's sort of a good exercise for any field to go through. But I think the more we communicate, the more it will become sort of a magnet for people from different fields, and we'll have even more collaboration. So.
And it's a kind of a question of the times. Our mission is not just to do a wide reach to other sciences, but also a wide reach within issues of gender and ethnicity and different socioeconomic groups, to broaden the reach of computer science, the reach of algorithms. Any thoughts on that and the role that you could serve?
All kinds of different ways to approach that. I mean, the most basic is just in terms of being very intentional about who we invite, who we encourage to apply, who we bring inside and encourage to participate in the program. So you have to get people in the room in order to have that kind of inclusiveness. But also, once people get here, I think you can also do a lot to help people connect. Some people are more extroverted as scientists than others. And I think as a program organizer, you can facilitate more people connecting with each other and being a part of things. So I think being a little bit more proactive in that space will be also helpful. But also the communications. I think there's a lot of room there for reaching a broader general audience and getting people excited about theoretical computer science, which I think will then sort of help the pipeline, because that's also where the problem starts.
It's true. Yeah. One of the most useful exercises for me when I was thinking about what I want out of a Simons Institute to look like was to think of sort of aha moments that I've had during my own career, and what excited me about what I'm doing, or computer science, or a particular field within theoretical computer science. Can you sort of just remember an aha moment for you?
I think when I was first, for me, when I was first getting into quantum, it was all very mysterious. I mean, I had trouble reading those papers. I was sitting in a silo at UCI, sort of trying to understand this field from a distance and reading course notes and things. It was really exciting for me the first time I was able to understand a research paper and then actually prove some type of result about something. And just the idea that there was this marriage of, or this connection between really fundamental problems in physics and computational complexity, and they have a connection to each other, was really absolutely fascinating for me. That the complexity can inform the physics, and the physics can inform, computing, was really exciting. And I think complexity is sort of continuing to play a really important role in quantum computation in all kinds of different ways. So that was an exciting discovery for me.
Yeah, I could see that. Did you actually study physics in high school or in Princeton?
No. I mean, I was an engineer, so there's a required physics, intro course that I took, but I didn't have any special education or background in it.
So it was a deliberate decision that you wanted to study quantum computing because it seemed like an interesting field.
Yes, yeah. And I started by just sitting in on a class in physical chemistry, just because I had never learned what this quantum mechanics thing was. I just kind of was curious about it. So I wasn't actually intending to go into quantum computing at that point, but once I started learning more, it was kind of an amazing revelation to me. I mean, you start with all of these sort of basic abstract principles, and by the end of the quarter, you've derived the orbitals that you learn about, you know, in high school chemistry. I thought that was pretty amazing. So, so then, you know, I started doing more reading in quantum computing, and I got kind of hooked on it. So,
you've also written a book.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that?
It's a Xi book. So I wrote it in collaboration with a company called xibooks.com, and it's a web-based interactive textbook. Unlike many attempts at sort of making textbooks online where they just port the material into the web, this was sort of created from scratch with the platform in mind. So the tagline is less text, more action. So it's very succinct, but there are lots of animations and interactive exercises.
And the topic?
Discrete math.
Mm-hmm.
So I taught it with my UCI students in mind because I thought it would be a great tool for them to learn, especially the animation. So much of that material is dynamic, so I thought it would be great as a teaching tool. And I'm just delighted at how much it's caught on. So, you know, 40,000 students used my textbook last year, which is really cool. So it's really
amazing,
catching on in a way that I never expected. So
that's incredible. Yeah. That's 40,000 critics.
Yeah, and they all have a way of clicking and commenting on things. So we get a lot of feedback from that because it's all, you know, all on the web. So
interesting. So some of the reaction that I think we both get is mm-hmm. that isn't it cool? At least that's the reaction I get, that we are both women in this position. And the reason that this question occurred to me just right now is because I was thinking about the idea of 40,000 critics, and that course evaluations and evaluations.
Yeah.
From my experience, I've often heard from women faculty members mm-hmm. that experience is a little bit traumatic at times.
Yeah.
But apparently not for you.
I love teaching, and I think I get along pretty well with the students. I do this all the time when I get my teaching evaluations. There can be 99 positive comments, and I lock in on the one negative one, and it bugs me for a week afterwards. So I think there's a little bit of perspective going on here. But, you know, I get a lot of energy from teaching. I enjoy teaching. Unlike many of my colleagues, I enjoy teaching the freshmen and sophomores. They're eager to be there. They're excited. I feel like I have a hand in helping them stay in the program sometimes. So I feel like I have a chance to really kind of form their experience at UCI. So I've always enjoyed it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I guess I just wanted to ask you also about TCS more generally.
Okay.
You know, it has evolved quite a bit from our time at Berkeley,
mm-hmm.
and it's, you know, infiltrated many other fields and applications rather than just basic
right.
curiosity-driven research have come into our field. Any sort of thoughts about how this evolution occurred?
I remember when I graduated, you know, there weren't a lot of options as to what you would do afterwards. You would get an academic job, or you might go work for IBM Research, which operated much at that point like an academic unit. So, or you would just go into industry and do something unrelated to what you did as in your PhD. So those were kind of the options. And it's expanded a lot since then. And now there are so many opportunities to work in industry, and bounce back and forth in a way that you're really sort of using your theoretical expertise, but contributing, you know, in a tangible way to the company. Quantum right now is at a very exciting time in terms of this interplay between industry and academia. Because it's so new and it's so early, there's a lot of connections between the two. People, you know, our theory colleagues are going off and starting startups, and people are consulting with Google and IBM and Microsoft and their efforts there. So there's just a very tight connection, which is particularly exciting in this field. But I expect that to grow and continue as people, you know, sort of as our ideas sort of infiltrate more and have more of an influence, and people realize how important it is to have a good foundation to algorithms.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that one of the big challenges and opportunities as well is to explain how basic science on its own, or what they call, you know, curiosity-driven science, has remarkable outcomes, but they are not predictable. And therefore you've got to have sort of stamina and put your faith in the fact that there are excellent people and that this ideas, the basic foundations are intriguing, and let's see what develops without necessarily an immediate application.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes time.
It always takes time. In my opinion, to make a real impact, it always takes time.
Yeah.
If you knew where you're heading, then what's the point of going there?
Yeah.
In research, at least.
Yes.
Perhaps in life it's different.
Yeah.
But in research, if you knew exactly what the answer is, then you really are more in the realm of
then
solving
it's not
a
as
homework.
interesting a question. So, yeah.
It's not interesting a question. It's probably a lot more painful to get there.
Yeah.
But the reward is worth it.
Yeah, that's true.
So, wow, I'm so glad you're here.
I'm very glad to be here. Yeah.
And I know it's going to be a little tough commuting, but maybe it also allows you a little bit of freedom.
Yeah, it's kind of energizing in a way to be in a different place, in a different space. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to also collaborating with people here in terms of my research. So I think it's going to be good for that as well. So I think there are a lot of good things that are going to come out of this. I hope for Simon, certainly for me personally, it's great to be back here. So.
Definitely for Simon's.
Yeah.
So welcome, Sandy.
Thank you.
I am so, I'm pleased as punch and that you agreed and that we had the insight to ask you.
Thank you. Well, I remember it was in this room that
That's
you
right.
said, hey, I have kind of an unusual question for you, and you floated the idea, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. So it struck me right away as an exciting opportunity.
And to be honest, I didn't think about it before. We were just chatting, and then I was thinking to myself, this could work. Let's ask her.
Well, I appreciate your willing to do it. So.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.